Hello everyone, welcome to the Out to Lunch Festival. My name is Sean Kelly and we're here in the Black Box going out to you live, and today is a very special event for us. As part of the festival, we're featuring three of the greatest Irish poets writing today. We all have been recently or are about to be published by Doire Press. First up we will have Stephanie Conn. Stephanie's new collection is called Off-Kilter and it's a stunning piece of work and it'll be published this spring. Stephanie will be followed then by Nandi Jola, who's also got a new collection coming out this spring called This Home Is Neither Here Nor There. And finally, we have the legend that is Moyra Donaldson, whose recent collection called Bonehouse was published just before the pandemic, but never got a proper launch. So hopefully we'll be able to rectify that today and later this year. So first up, over to you, Stephanie Conn.
Hello everyone. I'm going to read a little bit from both the collections and then some of the new poems from Off-Kilter. So this is from the first collection, The Woman on the Other Side. Inca, Ice Maiden. The light will reveal at the touch of a switch the body of a sleeping child behind the glass, like an open hand scooped, ready to receive. Her head is bowed and the lice remain in the tight braids that fall about her face and cover her eyes. Visitors come to peer at the fine hairs visible on her arms, the hands in her lap, the grey shawl adorned with metal and bone. Those fine threads pulled round her slim neck 5 centuries before. Ready to follow the mountain path up towards the gods and the thinning air. All her life she'd been prepared for this, hand-picked, just like the priests' statues, gold, the coca leaf and chica for the child, the north-facing tomb. Did you speak from beyond the icy grave as they gave thanks, or choke on your frozen tongue when they named you goddess? Plucked from the pit, did you feel the lurch? Taken from the heavens and thawed, your blood poured out like that of a living child, crimson and pure. Some of the poems in this collection are set in Tasmania. Midnight Storm. There was no warning, unless you count the sight of a wallaby bouncing between pavements before sloping up the hill. Our shack still stood on its stilts at the top of the steep incline, its back pressed against the tinder-dry earth. You climbed the wooden steps, the baby swaddled in a sling, her warm body slung across your sweating skin and leaking breasts. The lightning ripped open the sky. The rumble drowned out the cry of our charge. You held your breath, knowing there was nothing between us and the clouds. I photographed the strike. Lavender Fields. We hide between the land's contours until they leave, resist the temptation to sleep on the still warm ground, intoxicated by the shrub's scent clinging to our skin. All this grew from a small bag of aromatic seeds taken from high in the French Alps and planted here at just the right altitude in the red soil. Precious cargo carried from their London perfumery to Van Diemen's Land, along the lanes past Lilydale to Nabola, to settle on this vista fit for the strain. We wait to see the last sun setting, backs pressed against the massive oak, speak only in whispers. No one in the world hears. No one knows we are here. Without local varieties to cross-pollinate or corrupt their perfect crop, they stayed, worked the empty fields, placed the fragrant drops into the earth in curves. The lilac moon keeps us alert, that and our fingertips. When the solstice sun rises over the mountain, we are feasting on lavender honey, our eyes glowing amber. So I'm going to read now from Ireland, and this collection takes its inspiration from my ancestral history of Copeland Islands off Donaghadee. Walled garden. To live on a small patch of flat land in the middle of the sea, you need defences. If herbs and fruit trees are to grow, if you want chicken flavoured with rosemary or poached pears and blackberries, you must build 4 walls. Raise the temperature by degrees to coax saplings to the sky. The stone absorbs what little heat the sun gives, prevents frost forming on fuchsia-flowered currants and salt-laden iced winds from battering the swelling fruit. There is nothing ornamental about this square of stone, built so close to waves, churning up porcelain and flakes of skin. Making butter. At 5 a.m, the 4-foot churn is pulled from the garden, where sun and wind have kept the milk sweet. The hour will keep it cool. Her utensils are gleaming, salt scrubbed and scalded, resting in cold water carried up from the well in the lower field. I ask to drop the skimmed cream into the churn. She lets me watch. The heavy dash starts to rise and fall, slowly at first, slowly, slowly, then faster. And I count 50 lifts a minute, then 50 more and more until my head is dizzy with it and I fear a faint, knowing I will lie here on the cement floor till the butters come. I wish she'd sing a churning song to pass the time until the mixture breaks. She works it silently. At last she stops to wash her hands as a surgeon would, lowers them into steaming water that should scald her skin. She doesn't flinch, but scoops up the creamy sunshine in her glowing hands, cleans it 4 times, salts it, shapes it into half-pound pats. When she turns her back, I press in the print of a thistle, feel my fingers sink just as easily as a blade might, and when she turns around, I am shoving my fist into my mouth. So Esther was my great-great-grandmother, and she was one of only 3 families who lived on the island. She married Richard Clegg in 1845, and they went on to have 9 children. Esther. For years, my body grew taut, then slack, as each child filled me to the point of breathlessness, jabbing my middle, pressing out the skin in tiny hand or foot-shaped pouches. When they sucked at the breast, my belly dragged itself back in to a strange new shape. Their pursed lips surrounded by a dark sun grown twice its normal size. And each time a new baby latched on, I caught my breath, the slitting pain of that first suck searing to my stomach's pit, following the fine line of black hair that doesn't have time to fade between births. As though my smooth centre belonged only to childhood, and becoming a woman brings downy hairs to the face. I barely had time to bleed, would happily have washed the stained sheets he liked to keep white, and pegged them to dry above the freesia, looking out to see which field he had left fallow. So the collection moves to the mainland, and there are some poems set around the coast and some in Newtonards and Cumber. This is Killynether. May flowers are still in bloom by the hazelwood. You stay to breathe in their bruised sweetness. I walk away to all that remains of the walled garden, rest my back against quarried stone. All this belongs to us now. The grand house is gone, its slender turrets forgotten. Nothing could be done. I'd love to see its empty rooms, stripped floorboards, an open door, but there is only fern and moss, a rectangle of cut grass. I long to feel Gothic. Scrabble Hill rises behind me. We have strolled the tree-sheltered track, looked back over the patchwork slide of farmed land, kissed at the summit. You once turned a leaf to reveal 3 types of caterpillar: greyling, barred umber, nut tree tussock. I wondered if we'd see them morph into butterflies. Today there are none. We are too far from bark and the magic's wearing thin. I never wished for magic wings. Prefer the certainty of black dolerite, sandstone, agglomerate. This is the only thing I cannot bear to lose. I steady myself, prepare to break it. And I'll finish with a couple of newer poems from the new collection Off-Kilter, which will be published in the spring. And this collection is inspired by the experience of chronic illness. Some deal with it more directly and some indirectly. An African forest elephant approaches. 1. When she finally arrives, there's no denying her. Even the smallest forest kind is one of the largest mammals on earth. Other creatures keep their distance. Know if they are to eat, they must target the calf, risk the mother's pointed rage. Keystone species, uprooting trees, scrub, turning the savannah to grassland. In drought they dig, make water holes. I creep with all the forest animals, rest my bare knees on dusty ground, slake my thirst. My thinning face reflects sunken eyes, the corners of my mouth twitch. When I pull back the upper lip, my incisors are growing into tusks. 2. Now I keep close to water, protect skin with mud and dust, walk, don't trot, gallop or jump. Eat for 3/4 of the day. Wrinkles retain water, keep me cool. I let my pillar legs take the weight, communicate through seismic signals, detect vibration in the bones. Cross-section with contrast. They are scanning the inside of my body. Abdominal cavity, blood vessels, bones. Iodine pulses through my veins, flushes warm and wet between my legs. I've been forewarned, assured I will not piss myself. A man with kind eyes squeezes my hand twice, then steps behind a screen. I wonder if it's bulletproof. I'm on my back, stripped of my wedding ring, the necklace from my daughters. They hold no traction here. In this room full of machines that ignore the heart in favour of the stiller organs. Anyone having investigations for various symptoms will know the contradictory information that you can be faced with. Attending to the wound. 1. Lick the wound. Licking a wound can promote healing. Let the saliva coat the skin. Its natural antibacterial agents will do it the world of good. 2. Do not lick the wound. Licking a wound is unsafe. Saliva contains a wide variety of bacteria. The wound could become infected. Amputation may be required. So frogs and toads feature quite heavily in this collection, and this is in the voice of one of those frogs. Gastric brooding frogs. The day I swallowed my children was the day the world took notice. It was 1974, though I had been making my stomach a womb for years, and her mother and my mother ate their own eggs and felt the alkaline kick at the hydrochloric acid stopped, a necessary halt to prevent us digesting our young. I tolerate the fast when 20 squirming tadpoles hatch in my belly and wriggle sticky mucus from their gills to keep the furious acid at bay. My middle bloats until both my lungs collapse and I must breathe through my skin till the birthing starts. Propulsive vomiting as I spew out into the world fully formed young. And I'll finish with this one. Thank you very much for listening. A tonal shift in edge. This is not a watercolour moment, but one that emerged from acid smeared on copperplate and cutting in the dank corner of a locked room. When the door opens onto a raging sea without the draw of shingle or sand, do not shrink from the framed space or let doubt bleed into the architrave. Close your eyes. Forget all you've been told about looking and leaping. Taste the ocean on your lips. And if you desire a soundscape, pucker to a whistle in the nipping wind. Become a bird. Let your elongated wings find the air's current. Lift you high above wood and walls, crashing waves. Carry you from landlocked salt lakes to the open sea. Thank you.
I'm going to open with the poem Black Irish, an Ambiguities Poetry Jukebox. Poem Black Irish. We met at sea in Cape Agulhas, the infinite world running in confluence. A boy on a bus number 11 translates to his mother like a needle on a thread weaving in and out of English and Swahili. A nun taps the woman on the shoulder. Habari. Habari yako. Hello. How are you? They speak for the rest of the journey through their habit and hijab. The boy's arm stretches towards the bell, thrusting between prams, stairs, and moist breath of an early bus. And below, under pale faces, to the halt of the bus. This is what Irishness means, she thinks to herself. Strangers speaking to you in Swahili, and a child who thinks his father was from the Falls. The next poem is called Crossing Borders. It was for Palestine and Israel, and it can be found on the Herstory website.ie. The line can be crossed. Walls can come down. Sky was never the limit, just infinite. See a world of life, for land opens itself to us with its underground antennas connecting and breathing us in and out with coded messages on tree trunks, birds taking flight and landing. Hear the silence of the roses. See the seasons change, the ebb of a bud springing into life. There was never a right time to look at regret, for peace is never too late, turned away or unwanted. I want us to hold our hearts, embrace change, for we are dust, molded breath in fear, inhaling the world in our senses. We feed the brain, borders worth crossing, sky a landmark for flight. Invisible, like sea, land, inconceivable world below the surface of olive branches for us into this cycle of infinite existence of hope. The next poem represented Northern Ireland at the Transposie Festival in Brussels in 2021, Entomology. Our bodies are wiretaps, carried by a cuboid vessel into the viscera of sphere, like weevils bare to illumination, leaning on the nearest thing, the thing that is itinerant of the two dimensions at speed of light, transporting us through quotidian noise. Now I'd like to read the poems that will be in the new collection from Doire Press. And the first one is called You Were Not Born Here, Were You? Anyone who is different cannot be interwoven between us and them in the orange and the green of our culture. Our fabric cannot be dyed, nor can family crosses be remade. We will invent boxes instead. Black, Irish, black, other. Great house. The night lamp was burning low. Beasts low and arranged by the kraal, the wood pile and windows adorned in their bewailing clothes. Elders in shrouds and men with fur and skin hanging. A woman enters the house with a lemon balm in one hand, a white cloth around her torso. At a distance, 6 men approach, each with a shovel around their shoulder, passing the beasts, the women, the children, alluding to an Augusta Savage's work. The next one doesn't have a title yet. I watched her unpack Dad's clothes, belongings, and other things, one by one. They disappeared out of sight. The elephant tusk paraffin lamp bought in Swaziland in 1980. The straw hat from Lesotho. His brown leather belt with a silver buckle that he used to beat us up with. Umziwacha. Kangela paya. Umlilo. Umlilo. Galela manzi. Galela manzi. I only learnt later that this was a French rhyme, Ferrero Rocher. We sang it to mock, to fount, to cheer a man for beating up his wife. We sang it as children, whilst playing with paper dolls and banging them together. Nongqawuse. UNongqawuse wayeyintombi emhlophe. Wayeyintombi endiliselekileyo. Kodwa ke kuba amadoda ngamaxoki. Axakekile oxam. Bayaxapulana, bayaqhekezana, bayilonto, bayaqhekeka. They lied. They lied. Strange fruit. This poem, I'm kind of thinking that might change the title for it. but it was written in response to the femicide that is still going on in South Africa and what is going on here with women being killed by their partners or strangers. It's called Strange Fruit. We are worse than animals, lower than the snakes' bellies. Even the darkness still offers light, but we slumber down in the stagnant waters of our parallels. And the last poem is called Tapestry of Love. Let us give love a chance to give our children hope of a world without hatred, where black and white walk hand in hand. Let the peace walls come down so that the ghost of the troubles, of apartheid, of the Holocaust, of the Rwandan genocide can be finally laid to rest. For history to remain history, only to be found in books on shelves. Let us emancipate to one song, one healing, one dance, one song, for we are one race of many colors, many dreams, many voices, but we are one tapestry, a tapestry of love. Thank you.
Afternoon. It's really lovely to be here, to be able to read some poems alongside Stephanie and Nandi. The first poem I'd like to read is from an earlier collection, Carnivorous, and it's called A Queer Few Things. Over a lifetime, the gods make many things of you. One terrible winter, I was an iris. Oh, do not assume that bulbs remember spring and flowering. I've sat down at a table laid with the corpse of my child and been expected to eat. And I have soared, of course, seen how the world is spread wide for those who fly. I have killed with beak and talons to fill the little gaping throats. I have asked for the chariot's reins and set my whole world blazing. I have been fox and snake and bear. I have been stone and waterfall. I have been loved too much and not enough. I have been split open by the first green shoot. I have been folded neat and safe inside my shell. I have been both grit and pearl. I have been the earth's gold veins, the aching rift between the continents. I have been a heart hunted through the darkening woods and the heart pierced by arrows, chambers breached and flooded. I was the vanishing point too. This next poem, one of the things I've been involved with over the last few years was a project with a visual artist, Paddy Lennon, and we worked together on a book called Blood Horses, which was about the history of the thoroughbred horse. And when I was doing research for the book, I found it was very easy to trace the lines of the stallions, but less easy to trace the lines of the mares and the history of the female side of things. So this poem is called Mare. I am not an obedient or dutiful woman. I never come when I'm called. When I'm hungry, I eat. When I'm thirsty, I drink. But I'm thinking of the herd of horses kept from water for 3 days, then released, the stampede to the river to be slaked at last. I'm thinking of those 5 mares who, when the prophet sounded the battle horn, the call to war, turned back despite their thirst. These are the foundation mares, the daughters of the wind that bred the 12 royal mares that bred the winners, their genes splicing with the 3 stallions, faithfulness mingling with pride, duty with self-determination. perfect combination for passing the post first. I have dwelt in the small universe of the womb before the world, felt the power of the womb to expel into the first sorrow, the first joy, the abandonment of being. I have been the universe for you, the circle of the belly, the world, the life, the mystery of love. Have you ever heard the sound of a mare whickering to her foal? What whip will be laid to its back? What race will it win or lose? Scanned in foal, month after month, her belly became heavier, swollen until her teats began to fill and drip with milk. But as more time went by and no foal came, we saw it was a phantom she had grown, replacing the clustered beginnings she'd lost long ago. When most afraid for you, daughter, I think of her lost embryo. I'd take you back into myself, every cell, each chromosome. I'd have you back before birth, before conception, all your future still ahead. I'd hold you as an imagined thing, safe. And the most recent collection is called Bone House, and I suppose the theme of the book is picking up on some of the themes in Carnivorous in terms of relationships between mothers and daughters. And in the book there are 4 poems all called Bone House, and they're kind of, I suppose, I imagine them as the kind of spiny processes on which the rest of the book hangs. So this is the first one of them, Bone House. Skin a cat more ways than that, rat-a-tat-tat, open the door and see who's there, I dare you. Father becomes dust, father who carried fire, heat to the hearth. Mother gets no rest, parading through the night, eternal like the moon. Of all the impossible things, the worst is her sadness. Haunted because not humbled. Sit beneath the weight of days until you become stone, fossil. What was this? Did this once live? It was not their lives that mattered. It was their lives that mattered. It's little things, like the electric candles screwed onto the piano. Here's the moon again in the aftermath, with the rain falling and only a small stone in my hand. All that fear and hope and pleading, all that needing to be saved. A son's a son till he gets a wife, a daughter's a daughter all of her life. Under the moon, my mother. Blowflies, love. Something must have died behind the kitchen cupboards, for each morning there's another batch of blowfly, slow and empty though, vacant, as if whatever hatched them was not wet enough, not sufficiently putrescent to nurture more than these zombie flies. The butt convictionless against the window, ugly iridescent jewels on the succulent leaves. So different from the urgent, seething mass that afternoon in my teenage bedroom, manifested while I was at school and I already seeped in horror story gothicness. What had brought them here to blacken my window with their noisome swarm, turning the day to fright? My mother went in, closed the door behind her, dealt with it. This next poem, I suppose, is about the anger that mothers feel when something threatens their children. It starts off with a quote from Dante's Inferno. It's called Hecuba in the Button Estate. Then, reft of sense, did she bark like a dog, such mighty power had a grief to wrench her soul. I am the lip-curled cur that can't be kicked aside. You can't outstep me despite the booze and bluster with the boys, the red-handed comrades, the drug runners, the ones you send to take a baseball bat to a girl in an upstairs flat, big man. I am the bitch mother that howls outside your window on those dark nights when sleep is hard to find. Mind you never leave your door ajar, or I'll be in your bed with you, blood on my mad jaws, tearing open the yellow flab of your belly, eating your balls. Something a little bit more peaceable, perhaps, after that. This one's called A Sudden Shaft of Light. My demented mother, who doesn't know me anymore, looks up as I come into the room. "Ah, there's my wee darling Moyra," she says, such love in her voice that everything falls away but love. The slate is clean, and I, newborn again and perfect, know myself beloved daughter before the darkness closes in again. I'll read one more from this collection. Just over 2 years ago now, I became a grandmother for the first time, and this poem was written. We went on a kind of little family holiday to Iceland when my daughter was pregnant. So this is called First Glimpse of Orcas in Flacciflo Bay. We've stood on deck for hours until we're nearly frozen, nearly given up. Our small family, husband, wife, our 2 grown girls, and our granddaughter swimming in her own warm amniotic ocean. Then a shout goes out. My body begins to tremble. In the very crest, the blessing of their movement upwards, in the curve of their black bodies, hung for one moment against the white ice space between sea and sky, I am lifted on their shining backs into a fierce new longing. And I'll just finish off with 2 new poems. During lockdown, we're lucky enough to live out in the country, so I was surrounded by nature and very few people around at all. So this poem is called Animal Communication, a lockdown acquired skill. Even when I ask nicely, the mice refuse to leave the house, put up a reasonable argument about winter chills in their small, soft bones. The rats in the feed store snigger when they see me. Our little flock of rescue hens, they're happy to chat any time, so long as you don't mention the past. A robin has set herself up as spokesperson for the garden birds, perches on the Buddha's head, gives off at me through the window if the sunflower seeds get low in the feeders. Crows love a good mystery story. The dog's bemused. "I love you," he says. "What more do you need to know?" Cat mostly keeps her thoughts to herself, but occasionally mutters under her breath that where she goes at night is nobody's business but her own. Spiders are cryptic, talk in metaphors. Flies are an angry lot, snipey little comments in passing. You can't get much sense from those gadabouts, the daddy-long-legs, and butterflies speak in little homilies intended for spiritual edification, which gets boring. The caterpillars on the nasturtiums have their mouths too full to speak, but I do get a passing thank you for the flowers from the bees on their way to work. One horse always has his mind on higher things, the other has ambitions. Now and again she lets me know she considers me adequate as a skivvy, but I mustn't let standards slip. Slugs are very knowledgeable about constellations, and way more interesting than you might think. I'm not ready yet to hear from the worms. And I'll just finish with this tiny little poem, which is during the last couple of years, it has been such a pleasure to have my granddaughter, who's teaching me to play again, teaching me all kinds of things. And this poem is just called Granddaughter. You offer your upturned hand to the wonder of water falling. Drops gather in the small cup of your palm. I name it for you, rain. And you give it back to me, the tired world all new again. Thank you.